Welcome to Asian Music Idol, your ultimate backstage pass to the hottest stars and stories in Asian pop.
Welcome to the deep dive. We've got quite an interesting piece in front of us today. It's from The Guardian,
Mm-hmm.
and it points towards this, well, potentially groundbreaking moment in music that's about to happen right here in the UK.
Yeah, it shines a light on an artist who many people outside certain communities might not actually know, Arijit Singh.
Right, Arijit Singh. But according to this article, he's operating on a massive global scale. It's quite the contrast.
It really is. And the main event the article flags is his upcoming show, a big UK stadium show,
Okay.
which is pretty significant when you think about his profile versus, what usually gets mainstream coverage here.
Exactly. So our mission today, just using this Guardian piece as our source, is to unpack that. Like, who is Arijit Singh? Why is this specific show such a big deal?
And what does it maybe tell us about the bigger picture? Global music, cultural influence, how things might be changing.
Okay, let's start right there. Who is Arijit Singh according to this article? What does it tell us?
Well, the first thing that jumps out is just the sheer scale of his global popularity. The numbers are kind of staggering.
How so?
It says he has more Spotify followers than, get this, Taylor Swift or Ed Sheeran.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
More than Taylor Swift.
Yeah. And globally, on Spotify, in terms of monthly listeners, he's ranked just one spot behind Harry Styles.
Okay, that really puts it into perspective. That's huge reach.
Definitely gives you a sense of the numbers involved.
So what's the flip side then? According to the article, what about his presence in the UK mainstream?
Well, that's the contrast, isn't it? Despite those massive global figures, the piece points out he's never actually had a song in the UK Top 100 singles chart.
Never.
Or the albums chart. So there's this real disconnect highlighted in the piece.
Interesting.
It also mentions his background. He's described as a Bengali artist.
Okay, so we got this picture. An artist with, frankly, mind-blowing global stats, right up there with Western superstars on Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
Basically invisible on the traditional UK charts. Which brings us neatly to this historic show the article talks about. What are the specifics?
The key detail is that he's set to be the first Indian musician ever to headline a UK stadium concert.
A stadium. Which one?
The Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. That's 63,000 seats.
63,000. Okay, that's serious scale. And the article puts that venue in context too, right? Who else is playing there?
Yeah, it does. It mentions that the very same stadium is hosting huge global names like Beyoncé, Kendrick Lamar, and Imagine Dragons this summer.
Right.
So putting Arijit Singh on that exact same stage, it really underlines the magnitude, doesn't it? Especially for that venue.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
And what does the article say about the significance of this? I see there's a quote here from Nihal Arthanayak, the BBC presenter.
Yes, Arthanayak is quoted. He says the show demonstrates the artist's, and I quote, sheer power.
Sheer power.
And he also calls it an incredible statement of Indian culture in the West.
That's a strong phrase. Sheer power. So how does the article describe the kind of artist who wields that kind of power? What about his music, his artistry?
It paints him as, well, very versatile, a singer, obviously, but also a multi-instrumentalist.
Okay.
It really highlights his range, saying he can shift gears from like a synth-laden dance banger all the way to traditional Indian classical music.
Quite a spectrum.
Yeah. And it emphasizes his technical skill, too, calling it astounding technical ability. And then there's the emotional side. His voice, his searching vocal lines have an emotional impact to stop you in your tracks. That's how the article puts it.
Stop you in your tracks.
Yeah.
Powerful stuff. Nihal Arthanayak also weighs in on his talent specifically, doesn't he?
He does. He calls Singh a once-in-a-generation artist, even for India, which is saying something.
Definitely.
He talks about his range, his talent, his virtuosity, and his advice for people who might not know him is pretty straightforward.
What's that?
Basically, just listen to it as beautiful music. He suggests you can feel the sentiment and vocal depth, even if you don't actually understand the language he's singing in.
That's quite compelling. Focus on the feeling, the emotion, the sheer musicianship.
Yeah,
It makes you wonder, though, if he's this talented, this huge globally, why hasn't he broken into those UK charts before? What reasons does the article give?
It suggests a couple of key things. One is language. He apparently rarely sings in English.
Wow.
He uses a range of Indian languages instead. And the other big factor mentioned is his mastery of something called playback singing.
Playback singing. Okay, yeah, that might not be familiar to everyone listening. How does the article explain what that is?
It defines it pretty clearly as the art of recording the vocal parts for Bollywood films,
Right.
which the actors then lip sync to on screen.
Okay, gotcha. So the actor on screen isn't actually singing the song we hear.
Usually not, no. And Arthaniak in the article connects this directly to that emotional impact we were talking about.
Oh, so?
He says, the greatest singers are great actors. They bring emotions through. His point is that Singh isn't just singing a song in isolation.
Right.
He's recording it for a specific character, often played by huge stars like Shah Rukh Khan, in a specific scene. So Singh kind of embodies that role, that emotion.
Ah, I see. So the audience feels that connection through his voice, tied directly to the film's story and characters.
Exactly. It's deeply integrated. And this Bollywood connection, it does more than just provide that emotional link, according to the article. It also creates this really broad appeal.
How does that work?
Well, Arthaniak points out that Bollywood films are often designed as family viewing, like something different generations go to see together.
Okay.
He makes a comparison like, oh, you probably don't get your granddad and mom to go along to the Fast and the Furious with you, right?
No, definitely not in my family. Fair point.
Right. But with Arijit Singh's voice being part of these shared cultural moments, these films everyone sees. The article says you get this unique situation where multiple generations of one family fall in love with his voice. It bridges generations.
So it's not just mom and dad's music or the kids' music. It's everyone's.
Precisely. It creates this incredibly deep, wide, multi-generational fan base. And that kind of fan base, maybe it doesn't need the usual Western pop machine to sustain itself.
That makes a lot of sense. It explains the scale without needing chart hits in the same way. What else does the article tell us about Arijit Singh, the person, his story?
It gives a few biographical details. Born into a musical family, which helps. Started training really young, age 3 apparently.
3, wow.
Yeah. His big breakthrough hit was a ballad called Tum Hai Ho from a 2013 film, Ashiki 2.
Okay, 2013. So he's been having major hits for over a decade now.
Consistently, yeah. More than a decade of big songs since then.
But where does he live? Does it say? Is he in Mumbai with the film industry?
No, interestingly, the article notes he actually still lives in his hometown, Jiganj, in West Bengal, not the sort of showbiz center of Mumbai.
Really?
It also mentions he's married to a childhood friend and generally doesn't talk to the press, stays quite private.
Huh. So despite this immense fame, he maintains a certain distance. How does the article describe his public image then? His sort of approach?
Well, there's a quote from a Guardian reviewer who saw his UK arena tour in 2024. They said his performance exudes humility.
Humility.
And Nihal Arthanaike echoes that. He's quoted saying, humility is key to his fame. He lets the music speak.
He lets the music speak.
Yeah.
That feels like it ties everything together, doesn't it? The focus on the skill, the emotion, not the hype.
Yeah, it fits the picture. And this whole idea leads into the article's broader point about global platforms and cultural power today.
Right, there's that strong line about him not needing Western validation.
Exactly. Arthanaik says it explicitly. Singh is not trying to court Western validation. The argument presented is that artists like him, well, they're already huge as it is, thanks to platforms like Spotify and YouTube.
So the old gatekeepers, the Western media structures, they're just not as essential for this kind of global success anymore.
That's the thrust of it. The article states pretty clearly that these artists aren't reliant on the white gaze to give them credibility or validity.
Okay.
Their success is built differently, measured differently too, maybe. Global streams, sold-out tours in specific diaspora communities worldwide. It's not necessarily about cracking the UK Top 100 or doing the rounds on Western talk shows.
Does the article mention any other South Asian artists who kind of fit this mold, this model of huge success, without relying on that traditional Western framework?
It does briefly, yeah. It names rappers like A.P. Dillon and Hanuman Kind.
Okay.
And also UK-based Asian collectives like Daytimers as examples of others operating successfully in this sort of space.
And this all fits into the context of the UK live music scene itself, which the article mentions is actually doing pretty well.
Yeah, surprisingly strong. It cites a record 6.1 billion economic impact in 2023 for the UK live music industry. And it notes that while, venues like Wembley Arena have hosted Indian artists before, now you're seeing artists like Singh and also Diljit Dosanjh and Shreya Ghoshal looking at even bigger tours, hence the stadium show for Singh.
Diljit Dosanjh. He's another key example the article uses to illustrate this global shift, right?
Absolutely. He gets quite a bit of focus Described as a Punjabi actor and singer,
Okay.
he played 6 UK arena dates just last autumn, including 3 nights at London's O2 Arena, big shows.
3 nights at the O2. That's significant.
And the article mentions a 5-star Guardian review of his Glasgow show, calling it an overwhelmingly joyful celebration.
High praise. And he's had some visibility in the U.S. mainstream too, hasn't he? Unlike Singh, perhaps.
Yes, that's highlighted.
Yeah.
His appearances at places like the Met Gala and the Coachella Festival, the article notes he was a rare Punjabi face in those kinds of settings.
And Athanai connects Dosanjh's presence at those high-profile events like the Met Gala back to this idea of global relevance, doesn't he?
He does. He argues that if events like the Met Gala want to remain globally relevant, they actually need people like Diljit Dosanjh there. It's not just about the artist seeking validation anymore.
It flips the script a bit.
Exactly. And then Arthanayak offers this really potent concluding thought on the whole cultural power dynamic. He talks about the sheer size of India's middle class.
Right.
And basically argues, in terms of cultural power, you can't just say it rests in the hands of the West anymore.
That really does tie it all together. The article uses Arijit Singh, this whole phenomenon of massive global reach versus UK chart obscurity. The stadium show's significance, his unique artistry tied to Indian culture and playback singing, his humble persona. It uses all that as evidence for this larger shift.
Yeah, evidence that huge cultural power and success are thriving globally, driven by communities, by digital platforms, often quite independent of those traditional Western media pathways.
It really forces you, as a listener or reader, to maybe look beyond the usual channels, doesn't it? Beyond the familiar charts and headlines.
Definitely. To recognize there are these massive stars, massive cultural movements happening on like parallel tracks all around the world.
So to wrap up this deep dive into the Guardian piece, we've explored this fascinating puzzle of Arijit Singh. Huge global numbers, minimal UK chart presence. We've seen why this stadium show is such a landmark moment.
And how the article explains his appeal, that unique blend of artistry, the power of playback singing, the deep connection through Bollywood that spans generations.
Right. All pointing, according to the article, towards this bigger picture where global platforms are empowering artists like Singh, like Diljit Dosanjh, who aren't necessarily chasing or needing that traditional Western stamp of approval.
And it suggests this fundamental shift, this diversification of where cultural power actually lies now. It's not just centered in the West anymore.
Exactly. The article via Arthanayak encourages just appreciating the music itself, the sentiment and vocal depth, language aside. So maybe the final thought to leave you with, based purely on what we've discussed from this source, given the scale of these global platforms, the economic clout, the cultural power of non-Western markets that this article points to, what other artists, what other huge cultural phenomena might be thriving out there on a massive scale, completely outside the traditional Western media spotlight that you just haven't stumbled upon yet?
Something to think about, definitely. There's probably a lot we're missing if we only look in the usual places.
Indeed. Something to consider next time you're exploring.
Thanks for watching Asian Music Idol. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay updated with the hottest buzz in Asian pop culture.